Just anybody who doesn't know me, my name's Jeff Gaulthier. I'm a displaced worker from across the river. I want to speak more about the community than about my personal issues. What it is in order to speak about the community, I have to touch on the personal as well. Come from a family of 5 brothers. All 5 have jobs either with the mill or directly related to it. Because of that mill, 1 is injured, can no longer work, 4 are unemployed, and that's reality. Now, to kill time, I do whatever I can, and on the weekend we're going to a garage sale. And what really got my attention was the number of garage sales that are saying moving, must sell everything. These are people from this community who have to go elsewhere for work, and it's just not right. On my way down here today, I drove by the marina down by the government dock. At Claybanks, there was 4 berths out of the entire marina that are being used. The rest are vacant, deserted, just not being used. And I think that's indicative of everything within this community. It's a bloodletting, and people have to be able to see that. As well, you have to realize that for every job lost out of an industry like this that supports a community such as Dryden, there are 3 to 4 spin-off jobs that are lost as well. So for every 100, we're now losing 1,350 to 1,400 workers within the community. We just had another announcement of another closure of another business, Tourmont, on the highway, which supplied equipment for mining, forestry. Now for those miners, foresters who maybe still be working, they now have to go to Thunder Bay or other communities in order to get the service that they require, a service that is no longer available in Dryden. Just on the weekend, we had our Relay for Life, and during that, about 10 o'clock in the evening, I went to get some snacks for some of the people participating. I went to one of the restaurants, but they closed. Some close at 8, some close at 10. You couldn't get anything. So I figured, well, I'll go to the mainstay, one of the 24-hour restaurants that have been open in Dryden longer than I've been here, and that was a Husky. Guess what? They close at 11 now. They don't have the people there or the turnaround to support a kitchen staff past 11 o'clock. This town is withering and it's dying. I also stopped in at This Works just down the street and asked if they could help me out with some information or shed some light on this that maybe I wasn't seeing. And what they explained to me was the last while they've had a huge influx from people who were affected both by the 2007 announcement as well as the 2008 announcement. With the 2008 announcement, we're now hitting the 6-month period, which is a critical point in a layoff. Those members who are going in are very discouraged. They're having a hard time with going every day, applying for work, and it's just not there. Part of the problems that they see, so they're not opposed to retraining. Some of them actually embrace the idea and they look forward to it. The problem is we don't have the services locally, so in order for them to get the training, they're being recommended they get sourced outwards to the bigger communities, Southern Ontario. So again, Southern Ontario, they've got the populace, they've got the so-called better training that we know we can put on in local communities like this, be it Dryden, Kenora, Atikokan, or wherever. Another item that kind of opens your eyes is the number of students. You look at a community and your community is based on the number of your children and the families that are in that community. Right now, the latest numbers that I got was the number of JK students registered is only 50% of those graduating. I never was good with numbers, but if you do the math, that can't be good. As well as that this works, April was their busiest month yet since their inception in 2005. They had 392 members go into that location this month, 50 of which had never stepped in there before. May was the second busiest month, where they had 294 members go in, and 31 on top of the additional 50 from April were as well new. So we're getting more and more people having to use that source. And the busier they are, the worse it is for our community. As good as that system is, and as good as those ladies down there work, it's not good for this community. Also, on another personal note, I think the government really, I know they've been talking a lot about EI lately. It has to be revamped. They have to look at how it works. As a union, the union has done a lot of hard work through many, many years of negotiating and trying to get better conditions for the workers, the community. Part of that is a severance package. So when the bad news like this hits us, we have a severance package that is supposed to help us transition into a new workforce, help us get through to new endeavors, whatever the case is. The idea wasn't to have us live off that severance while the government sits on our money that we put into EI and we cannot collect until every red penny of that severance is used up. The severance was there to help you transition. It wasn't there to sustain you. It's just the government passing off the bill back onto everyday workers and onto the shoulders of the people who have paid into EI for how many years and don't have the ability to claim. So in closing, I think the best example I can give about the way the government is treating these people is the way some of the people in the business, like Brother Maltese referred to, the raping, the pillaging, I refer to it as the arrogance and the ignorance of those people in power. And he's right, it is dictated by the shareholders. They need so much money, otherwise they're not going to invest. In 2003, we went through one of our first major restructurings over in the mill. I had the pleasure and the displeasure of being involved with that. And at one point, it was looking like there would be 300 plus members losing their jobs. Of those members, groups were formed called work systems groups that were looking at new ways which were above and beyond what anybody else in this country had ever done, let alone this community. But this community seen the value of that mill and knew what they put out of that mill as a product. So these work systems groups were formed, and what they did was they sat down and they revamped everything. They took every little minute task that was done within that mill and looked at how can we do it better? How can we cut our costs? How can we be more efficient and more effective as a workforce? The reality of that was everybody in those systems knew that that meant job cuts. Call it what you want, it was job cuts. And if that's what it has to be to keep the rest of the mill going, everybody was for it. And we had a member ask at the end of one of the systems, or at the sessions, one of the affected workers who was lower in seniority and knew very well that with the restructuring he would be losing his job. So he asked Marvin Cooper, who is big with in charge of the capital expenditures that go into outfits like this. And he explained to him, he says, you know, I understand what we're doing here. We're trying to keep Dryden going. We're trying to keep this mill going. He says, and I can live with that, and I can live with the restructuring knowing that it's very well going to cost me my job. He says, but where I have a problem with is the money that is paid to the people sitting in the chairs up top making the calls. He says, for example, how much money do you pay? And this is a direct quote from Mr. Marvin Cooper. He said, I am embarrassed to say how much money they pay me. So again, to me, that is just arrogance and ignorance on their part. They don't care about the system down here. All they care about is a return on their money. To me, that's no different than what the government is doing with the communities right now. It's easy for them to turn a blind eye, and I know all about that. So, again, in closing, I think what I'm going to do is I always like to treat my wife like a queen, so I'm going to move to Ottawa, because in the land of the brand, the one-eyed man is king. Long live the king.